Hello and welcome to this video tutorial designed to teach you the process of getting a custom built model from Maya into the Hammer engine used in Half-Life 2. My name's Stuart Deakinberry, also known as Mr. Bluesman over on the 3D Buzz forums. This tutorial is going to presume that you do have a working knowledge of using Alias Maya and also a working knowledge of using the Hammer engine. If you don't have this knowledge, please head over to 3dbuzz.com and in the download section you'll find several tutorials, all of which are free, on using Hammer and Maya. So let's get started. The first thing we need to do is head over and launch our source SDK, and in there we need to click on the option Create a Mod. Now this is going to create two directories for our mod. We can specify where we want these. One of them needs to go in the Valve directory under source mods. I'm just going to choose modify Half-Life 2 single player, so we click on next. This directory at the top is going to be the directory which, as it says, creates a bare bones mod. This is where we're going to store some of our basic files such as texture files for compiling later on. I'm just going to simply place this for ease of use on our C drive here, and I'm going to name the mod import underscore test. I'm also going to name it the same over here, and this will create the mod in the Valve directory. Now what's going to happen now, I'll click next and it's going to copy all the relevant files to the relevant places, so you'll see a shortcut on the video, and when we come back we'll be ready to go and start modifying some of these files in preparation to start modelling. Okay, our mod has now been created. The first thing we need to do is head over to the directories where the mod's been created and make a few amendments to the file system and structure. This is just creating a good workflow for us when we get to modelling in Maya, so everything's set up in place and we can just whiz right through and get things done fairly quickly. The first place we need to head, if you remember, was over on C drive, and we created the mod import test. We head in here. What we're interested in doing is going into the material src folder and creating a new folder named models. This is where we're going to store texture files for our models in their basic format, the Targa format. Now you must remember, any textures that you're going to use within Hammer need to be to the power of 2, for example 512 by 512, 128 by 64, etc. Now I have a couple of texture files, a texture and a bump map for it already prepared for this tutorial. You can use whatever you want. If we just cut those from there, and I'm just going to place them in there so they're done with and we're ready to go when we come back to texturing our model. Now with that done, we need to head over to our other directory under source mods, and there again is import test. We need to create several folders in here for the compiling to work. The first one is going to be a maps folder. Now we're not actually going to be using this one, but that's just in case you're saving maps out and for building your level or full game on your mod. The second one is going to be materials. Again, this is going to be the compiled textures, the VMT files that Hammer can read. Now within there I'm going to create another folder and again name it models, so I know that these materials are specifically for the models we bring into the game. The next folder we're going to create is the models folder. This is where we're going to store our models. And finally we're going to create a scenes folder. This is where we're going to store our scenes and models that we build in Maya, so if we ever want to come back and re-export them, or if we build new ones, we can save them all in there and they're ready for editing. It just maintains a good workflow and we know exactly where we're up to at all times. Okay, now with that, before we go any further, what we need to do is also head over to a few websites where we can get some tools that are going to be very important to us in this process. So I'm just going to minimize that. The first one we're going to need is, we're going to head over to this website, the Valve Developer Software site. I'll include the link in the text file, but I do recommend that you check out this site. There's lots of tutorials on the engine for all kinds of things. If you download the version that's relevant to you, you will basically come away with this 360 zip there. What you'll need to do, just again for ease of workflow, is I created a folder and extracted all the files from it into this folder, and it's this particular icon that we're going to use here. This is the program. Secondly, we need to head over to this website, a guy called Pral. He's designed a mail script for Maya that allows us to do the export, so without him this wouldn't be possible at all. If you download the version that's relevant for you, I'm using the latest version 2.5 because it supports Maya 7. And what you'll need to do is take this file. Again, it'll come as a zip file or RAR file. There it is, Half-Life 2 export. And when you extract it, you'll come away with some scripts and preferences. If you place all of those into your Maya folder, mine's actually defaulting to my documents under Maya 7 and scripts. You copy all the scripts into there. The one that we're going to be using in this tutorial is SMD export mel. That's the important one. Okay, with that done, we're good to go and open Maya and set our preferences from within Maya. You'll see a shortcut on the video again, and when we come back, we'll be over in Maya and setting preferences and beginning to model. Alright, here we are in Maya. What we need to do before we start modelling is just set a few of the preferences within Maya and also set up a project directory where our files will be saved. It's very important to do this because this is how the exporter works. It's looking for files within these directories. So the first thing we're going to do is just set up our project path. If we go to File, Project and create a new project, the project name is going to be exactly the same name as your mod. So in my case, it's import_test. It's going to be located exactly under the Steam apps folder, source mods there, import test, so that's okay. Scene file locations. If you remember, we set up a folder for this named scene, so we just type the name of that folder in there. That's where it's going to default to when we save out our Maya file. Source images, this is where we're going to be pulling our texture files from. So if you remember, we left those over on the C drive over here under import test, materials and models. This is where they are, so we're just going to copy that directory, close it out, go back into Maya, Control V to paste it in, and that's all we need. You don't need to click use defaults because this will just create a bunch of other folders under this directory that we don't need. So if you just click accept, we'll be good to go. Right, the next thing we need to do is head over into our preferences under Window, Settings, Preferences and Preferences. The reason we're doing this, we're just going to match the Hammer engine as close as we can when we're working, so we don't get any problems once the model's imported. If you head down to the Settings tab, make sure your world coordinate system is set to up axis Z. This is the way Hammer works, so again, if we can match it, things are going to be a lot easier for us. The second thing we need to set is our working units. We're going to change this over to inches. The reason for that is that 1 unit in Hammer equals approximately 1 inch within Maya, so it's just giving us a good opportunity to maintain good scale sizes and workflow. So if we save that out, now going forward with the scale, what I tend to do when I'm going to begin modelling, if I've got an idea of the model I'm going to build in relation to the size of a character, this can help. Now 1 character in Half-Life is approximately 70 units high, so what we can do is we can build a reference to this height within Maya to compare the size of our model that we build to. So I'm just going to create polygon cube. I'll shade the viewport up so you can see it. Head over in there and I'm just going to change all these over to 70 units. I'll just scroll out of it. That will give us approximate height of a character within Hammer. Now what I'm going to do as well, obviously it's going to be no good for us having this in our way while we're trying to model. I'm going to create a layer to put this object in. If we double click on it, I'm going to name it height underscore reference and save that. Then I'm going to select the model, right click on that layer and add selected objects. So you'll see we can now view or hide that particular reference object. What I'm going to set it to though is the little box next to the V there will give you a template. so you can actually set it just to a wireframe to see the size of your model through it, or indeed if you want you can set it to reference so you can't actually move the model and do anything to it. I'm going to set it back to template. I'm going to take a shortcut on the video, and when we come back we're going to start making our first model to export into the Hammer engine. Now, as I said earlier, it is going to be a basic model. I'm not here to teach you modelling skills. You can choose whatever you want to model, that's not a problem at all, but I would suggest just to start with you keep things simple. So we'll take the cut now, and when we come back we'll begin modelling. Alright, we're ready to get modelling. What I'm going to create first of all is a good old polygon sphere. I'm going to be modelling out just a simple rock or boulder type object. Again, this is just for simplicity, and also down to the fact that many of these tutorials use a cube and just stick a texture on it. At least this object is something you can make and actually use within your mod if you're new to this. Now we can see when I've pulled the polygon object in, you can see from this reference layer we created the scale. It's just going to look like a pebble. So the first thing we need to do is change some of the sphere's attributes. I'm just going to bump the radius up to about 14. Yeah, that'll be fine, just a decent sized boulder. I'm going to leave the subdivisions axis and subdivisions height as they are, because we're going to be pushing and pulling some of these edges or vertices just to deform the object a little bit. Now we've got that and we're happy with the scale for it, we can actually get rid of this height reference layer. So I'm just going to right click on it, select it and delete layer, then select that object and get rid of it. We don't need it anymore. Now what I'm going to do to actually create the boulder is just deform the object using the Sculpt Geometry tool. For those of you that use 3ds Max, you're probably aware that you could do this very quickly and simply by adding a noise modifier onto this and then collapsing everything in the stack. We don't have that luxury in Maya. I'm sure there are probably some plugins out there or scripts that will do this for you, but what I like about the Sculpt Geometry tool is the fact that you've got full control over how it's going to look. So what we need to do is select the object, and we're going to head up to Edit Polygons and go all the way down to where's it gone? Sculpt Geometry tool, there it is. Open the dialog box. Over in here, for those of you who haven't used this before, you can see if we go over the object with it selected, we've got like a brush shape that follows the geometry. We can change that radius over here. If we just bump it up, you'll see the size of it is increased dramatically, and so on. You can also hold down the B key, middle click and drag left or right, and it will change the size of the brush for you. I suggest you do get used to some of these hotkeys because they will speed up your workflow. So I'm just going to leave it around there for now. Now the parameters that we're interested in using is push, pull and smooth, and they're going to do exactly what they say. If I have it on push and just scroll in, we're going to see it's pulling the geometry outwards. If I just scroll down, you can see it's starting to deform the geometry slightly. Now to model this out, I'm not going to sit here and make you watch me do this for 15 minutes or so. I'm just going to give you a rough idea. We're just going to model out something that you're happy with, a boulder shape, whatever you want to do. Just pull till you're happy. Try and not get anything that's too pointy and jaggedy, because that obviously won't look too realistic in the game. You can also go over to the push option and push them in just to create unevenness on the surface, because no rock is obviously going to be perfectly round. If you do get something that's a little jagged, you can always go over to the smooth tool and smooth things out a little bit there. So I'm going to take a cut on the video now. When you come back, you're going to see a fully modelled boulder which we're going to get ready to export out into the engine. Alright, so here we are, we've got our fully modelled sphere. You can see I've just gone through, spent a bit of time just deforming it slightly just to get a rough kind of boulder rock type shape. Now what we need to do is just set a couple of things before we look to export. What we need to do is have a reference model and a collision model for this object. The exporter will work and pull these layers over here, so if we set layers up for this, the exporter will read them correctly. So what I'm going to do is create two new layers. I'm going to name one of them reference, save it, and the second one is going to be named physics, and save that. Now what I'm going to do, the physics layer doesn't need to be textured at all, it just needs to be smoothed and added into this layer. We're going to texture the reference layer. So what I'm going to do is just select that object, hit Ctrl D to create a duplicate of it. You can see we've got a duplicate there because the name is changed to shape 2. I'm going to right click and add that into the physics layer. Okay, and hide that out now. I'm going to select the initial object and right click and add that to the reference layer so we can hide that out. I'm going to go back into the physics layer, select the object, go up to edit polygons, all the way down to normals, soften, harden, and open the dialog box. What we need to do is just set the angle up to 180 and click apply, and that will just create the soft and hard edges for us. It's going to be all soft, and close that out. You can see the lines have changed to an orange colour to indicate that has been successful. So now I can hide out that layer and bring back my reference layer. Oops. What we're going to do is look to actually texture this now. Now if you remember, we placed some of our textures over in the C drive under materials and models, so we're going to use that texture. What we need to do is open up the hypershade, and we need to create a new material. I'm just going to use, now this is very important, we need to use a Fong E. This is the way the script has been set up. So if I pull that in, what we need to do is double click on it, and I'm going to add the texture to the colour channel. It's going to be a file texture, and on the file texture we're going to click the little folder icon next to it and bring in our rock01tj. This can be whatever texture you want to use, so I'm just going to select that one because that's the one I had pre-designed for this particular lesson. I'm going to open it. You can see it's pulled it in there. So all we need to do now is middle click, drag onto the object, and we can close the hypershade out. So there we see a texture model. Now I'm not going to spend time in this tutorial worrying about UV mapping or anything like that. If you want to do that to get a perfectly textured model, that's fine. Obviously we can see a little bit of a seam there, but it's not going to be too much of a problem. If these are just going to be stacked in the corner blocking, they can easily be hidden with some clever lighting and positioning. So with that, what we're going to now do is look to set this up for exporting so we can bring it into the engine. The first thing we need to do is, I'm just going to bring that channel box first of all, my physics layer, is head over to File. Now if you installed the Mel script correctly, you should have in your file options Export SMD. We're going to open up this box. Now I'm going to show you something there just to teach you a little bit of workflow. The export settings, I'm going to leave these at default. We're not obviously exporting any animation at all, so we're just going to basically compile and exporting the reference and physics layers. We're not using level of details or anything like that, just something very simple. What we also need to do is go over to path settings. This is telling the exporter where it's going to place the SMD files ready for compiling into the engine. Now what we should be able to do is just click on default, and we will have that going into import test under your source mods, model sources. It's going to create a folder called model sources because there are source models, and it's named rock01smd. Now the reason this is for me, because I've previously saved this out, you need to make sure before you go into the exporter that you save your scene as, name your model, and place it under import test and the scenes file that we created, and that's where you'll save your scene. You can see I've already done that. If you don't do that, it won't give you that default path for your SMD files to export into. So we'll head back into that. We've got our path settings correct. What I'm going to do is go to our QC settings. Now what we can do here is specify the surface type of the objects, etc. There is an option in here for rock. There it is, rock, and this is going to be how the actual surface reacts if it's shot or anything like that. So I'm just going to choose stone medium. Now what we do, everything is set up correctly there. What we need to now do is click full compile. Don't use this button, I think there's a bug on it. If you click full compile, you'll see that taking process. Okay, that's been done. Don't worry about this error here. I think that is something to do with the texture export. Don't worry about it, because we are going to go in manually and compile the textures. So with that done, what we can now do is head over and compile this model and look to view it within the Hammer engine. Again, you're going to see a shortcut on the video, and when we come back we'll have everything ready to compile. Thank you. Alright, now we're ready to compile our model for use in the Hammer engine. The first thing we're going to do is head over to our C drive import test and go into the materials folder where we have our TGA files, the textures we used. We're also going to open the 360G program, and we're going to set our working directory path. We want this to be the source mods folder, materials, models, so we need to set that. So if we go under file, set working directory path, my computer, C drive, program files, all the way down to Valve. A little bit long-winded, but we'll get there. Steam apps, source mods, import test, materials, models, and OK it. That's going to basically, when it exports the textures as VMTs, it's going to put them in the right place for us to use on our model. So all we need to do now is literally drag these textures. The first one's the one we used in Maya, the second one is a bump map version of it, so we can get a bit of false 3D imagery on the model. Now what we need to do is click new materials file. It'll open up this dialog box for you. If we select the shader as a vertex lit generic, that is important for use when you're using the texture on the model. The base texture, again, is going to be rock01. The bump texture is going to be rock01_n. We don't have a specular map, but if you do decide to make one, this is where you would add it. And we're going to add a little bit of contrast and click OK. You'll see it's been successful. It's created a material file there, so we can close that out. If we look under the source mods folder, materials, models, you'll see it's created the VMT file for the engine to read. We're just going to double click on that and make a slight adjustment to it. This line here we can get rid of, we don't actually need it. We'll just save that out. Okay, now what we need to do is actually go and compile our model. Now you'll see again under the source mods import test folder, on the export from Maya it's created this folder, and there's all our QC files and SMD files for that particular model. I'm just going to cut those out of there, and I'm going to place them into the models folder. Now what we're going to do is edit the QC file. If we just compile that now and drag that onto Studio MDL, yes, it will compile, but it'll put everything in here, MDL files, and what you'll end up with if you do a lot of models is just a big long list of all your models. What we can do is edit this QC file to set some directories to keep things neat and tidy for us. So I'll just open that with a text editor, and model name, I'm just going to add custom models, so this will create a folder where all my models will go into. Whoops, custom models slash rock. So any rock models that I make are going to go into this folder now. And if we click save and close that out, we can now drag this, and you can see why I put everything on the desktop. It's a lot easier than navigating through all these menus as little as we can, onto the Run Studio MDL. If you've done everything correctly and followed along, you should see this happen. You just have to give it a minute to think about it, and there we go, it's done. You see it creates the custom models folder. I'll go into that and rock, and there's all our files and the MDL file, so it looks like it's been successful. What we're going to do now is just take a shortcut on the video. When we come back, we're going to open the source SDK again and look in the model viewer to select the model and make sure it's been imported correctly and textured, and we can also go into Hammer and build a basic room and see if we can actually import this model. Alright, I'll see you in a second. Alright, so here we are in Hammer. We're going to basically get this model into the game so we can interact with it. See, I've just built a very basic room. just something, a square room with a player start, an info player start, a weapon and a light in there. I'm not worried about the textures or anything like that. As I said earlier in the tutorial, I wasn't going to be teaching how to use Hammer, just how to get a model into it. Now what we need to do is select on our entity tool, and we're going to bring it in as a prop physics override. This is overriding the static model with a physics model, so we can actually shoot it and it'll move around the level. Sometimes what can happen when you export a model as a static model, you can place it, see it in your editor, but it's not seen in game. If this is the case, just use a prop physics override instead for your model. It seems to fix the problem. If you do some searches on the forums, many people have come across this themselves. So just to alleviate that, I'm just going to use that straight away. Where are we? Prop physics override, there we go. So I'm going to create that. Put it on the floor somewhere over here, not so far in the corner. Hit enter. Now if I hit alt enter, it'll take us into the properties for the props physics override, and we want world model. We want to browse to our custom models folder, and all being well we should see our MDL file. There it is, rock MDL. So we click OK, apply, cancel out of that. If we just navigate around this screen, we should be able to zoom into it and see it. There it is in the game, our model. Excellent. Right, so all we need to do is save that map out, rock test, save. I'm going to take a shortcut on the video, and when we come back we'll actually be in game and we should be able to interact with the model. Alright, so here we are in game, our model fully imported, textured. If we just kneel down and go up to it, we can see it's bump mapped as well. You'll see the bump mapping and the texturing has kind of hidden the scene we had originally, so it's not really a problem, it does kind of look more realistic. We should find if we shoot the model, because we brought it in as a props physics override, it should react and move around accordingly. There we go, and you should, I don't know on the encoding whether you'll be able to hear it, but you can see little shards of rock splintering off and the sound of shards of rock hitting the floor. It's been a great pleasure recording the tutorial. It took me quite a while to figure this out and get everything working properly, so on the basis that I couldn't find anything else on the internet showing us how to do this apart from a few basic text tutorials, I decided to record it and share it with everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. Obviously it would be great if you can take things further than I have and share some more tutorials on maybe getting animated models in. That would be fantastic. Do suggest that you check out Prowl's website for the exporter, the Valve developer community for all the tools, and 3D Buzz for Hammer engine tutorials. Alright, I'll catch you later.